this a great game or what? Welcome back with the Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian. I'm his son, Jeff Kurkjian. Another episode back in person, thank goodness.
Right, and we just finished Labor Day. We had a wonderful time. Who do we have on the show today?
We have Pete Fairbanks, and actually for our first season, this is our first active Major League Baseball player that will be interviewed on the show. He is a closer for the Tampa Bay Rays, but we're not bringing him in just because he's an active Major Leaguer. No, he's a really smart guy. And this Friday, September 6th, which also happens to be my wife Emily's birthday, it is National Read a Book Day.
Right. So this spring, Jeff, I did one of the most fun stories I've ever done. I went to the Rays spring training, and Colin Poche, reliever for the Rays, and Pete Fairbanks did the New York Times crossword puzzle while I sat next to them, badgering them with inane questions, and they finished the whole thing by themselves in 40 minutes. I was completely dazzled. Have you ever tried to do the New York Times crossword?
It's hard.
It's impossible, and they are so good with words. They're both so well read. And it begs to remind you, Jeff, that Tom Seaver, the greatest Mets pitcher, greatest Met ever, there is not a close second, and one of the 10 greatest pitchers of all time, he did the New York Times crossword puzzle every single day. And if he was on the road, you know, with the Mets or the Red Sox or the Reds or whoever, White Sox, whoever he was pitching with, he would always be the first guy down to the coffee shop in the gift shop at the hotel in the morning, because sometimes they only had one, maybe two New York Times. This is a long time ago. So he had to have the New York Times so he could do the crossword. Otherwise, his day wasn't complete. So we have a starter who did the New York Times, and now we have a bullpen, the Rays bullpen, and Pete Fairbanks is the ringleader of that group. And it really bothers me that his vocabulary is way better than mine, and I'm a writer.
So he's going to be joining us, Pete Fairbanks, coming up at the end of this episode here. But we just celebrated Labor Day weekend, so we're coming out the day after Labor Day, and I had my fantasy football draft right here in our house. And I thought you would love the way we came up with the draft order. For years, we just did a randomize where ESPN will randomize it for you. This year, we went to the Phillies-Braves game. All my buddies live in Maryland. Guy came down from Connecticut. But we got tickets for the Phillies-Braves game. And what we did was every player, all 12 teams, every guy, had two Major League Baseball teams to watch on Saturday, and whoever's teams scored the most total runs would get the first pick.
That's great. So who got the first pick?
So my buddy Austin got the first pick because he had the Rays, and if I'm not mistaken, they scored like 11 runs or 13 runs on Saturday. And everybody else kind of went into the aggregate middle. But it was funny because two guys who aren't Phillies or Braves fans, one had the Phillies, one had the Braves. So they were rooting for these teams. The one who had the Braves, though, I have to say, was rather quiet because we were in Citizens Bank Park.
Right.
Not a good place to root for an opposite team.
Right. All right. So who was your number one pick?
So my number one pick in the draft, I got C.D. Lamb with the 5th pick in the draft.
Right. And who was the first overall pick?
Christian McCaffrey.
Okay. And this is important, Jeff, because we've just finished with the first weekend of the college football season. Right. And, of course, the NFL starts on Thursday. So on Is This Great Game or What, even though it's the baseball podcast, we have to talk about what else is going on in the world. So we'll talk about that. But I want you to see if you can remember the only fantasy league that I've ever been in. Because you went to the draft one year.
I was at the draft of the Umpire Fantasy Ejection League held by the members of the ESPN staff.
Right. Well, it wasn't just the members. It was by Judd Birch. Yeah. Judd Birch has worked at ESPN forever. One of my favorite guys, one of the great producers in the history of television. So Judd is the biggest Phillies fan ever. So he can't get in a baseball fantasy league because that means he would have to root certain days against certain members of the Phillies, which he couldn't do. He just would not do it.
Can't
so
do it.
he organized the Umpire Ejection fantasy league where you would pick 5 umpires before the season started, and whoever had the most ejections at the end of the year, out of year 5, you would win the league. So Judd would win every year because he knew all the umpires who threw everyone out. So I never won, but I did win one year for the best nickname of a team. Judd, who was so creative, is so creative and so funny. His home run call for any of the Phillies was always, fill thine horn with oil and go, which is from the Bible. Okay?
Right.
So now, a million years ago, there was an umpire named Ed Vargo, and he was a great umpire. So I named my fantasy umpire ejection league team, fill thine horn with oil and Vargo. So I never won the league, but I won the best name of a team in the league. And one night, Steve Berthume and I, one of my favorite people, Steve Berthume, we're doing the 1 a.m. baseball tonight, and like nobody's watching. But he says on live TV in the middle of the show, Dale Scott, umpire, Dale Scott, whenever you want to inject somebody, I'm ready for you, because he had Dale Scott on his team. And then at like 1:30 in the morning on a late West Coast game, Dale Scott threw somebody out of a game. So that is my history with fantasy sports of any kind, and I love it. It's unique, say the least.
Let's get into the takeaways here on Is This a Great Game or What? What do you got, Dad?
Well, I'm not real happy about this, but Sunday, the White Sox lost their 107th game. So they set the club record for losses in a season, and they did it on September the 1st, which is just unbelievable. And, Jeff, I'm sorry, they're going to break the 1962 Mets record for the worst team in modern baseball history. That's 1,900 on. The Mets went 40 and 120. I'm sorry, the White Sox are going more than that, and this is not good. Right now, by the way, Jeff, they are 39 games, this is through Sunday, out of 4th place. 39 games out of 4th place.
Wow.
And it's amazing to me, the Orioles in 2021 finished 39 games out of 4th place. So, but the record for the most games behind the next worst team in your division or your league was the 1916 A's, who finished 40 games out of 7th place. So this is just another dubious record that the White Sox are going to set. And it's not healthy for the game.
It's not healthy for the game at all. And it's so sad to see this. And a lot of people are comparing this team to the team you covered, the Baltimore Orioles, who started off a horrendous year when you were the beat writer there. But I don't think there's any comparison between these two teams at this point.
That Oriole team lost 21 straight games to begin the season.
Right.
But I think they finished with 107 losses.
I think that's what it was.
This team's going to finish like 122 losses, and that's sad to see. All right, on the other side of town, the Cubs just finished this amazing road trip. But they just had an 8-game span where they scored 14 or more runs 4 times in 8 games. They averaged 10 runs a game almost for a 10-game period, which is incredible. Wow. The last team to have 4 14 or more run games in an 8-game span was the 1897 Boston Bean Eaters, which no, it just amazed me, Jeff, how beautiful baseball is, that something that happened in 1897 is still relevant today.
Right.
It still appeared. The Elias looked that up, and the Boston Bean Eaters came up.
Yeah, when you say the turn of the century when talking about baseball, you have to ask which one.
Right, exactly. Baseball, as we've said, it's the beauty of the sport is it's the only sport that defines the modern era as 1900.
Right.
That's an old sport. All right, on to good things. The Astros are really good, Jeff, and their pitching is great again. And they just recently went from 10 games out to 5 games ahead in their division, and they did it in a span of 51 games, which is amazing. And the record for those things, the 1969 Mets, Tom Seaver, the star of that team, went from 10 games out to 5 games ahead in only 36 games. That's the Miracle Mets that won that year. It was an amazing season.
Well, what about our game changer of the week?
All right, well, I love this, Jeff, because Rich Hill, age 44, just made his major league debut this year on August the 27th. Wow. It's with the Red Sox. It's his 4th time with the Red Sox on the major league level. It's his 13th different major league team he's pitched for. So, Jeff, just to give you some, his first game was in 2005, okay? And Greg Maddux pitched in that game. And Greg Maddux is now 58 years old. So it just goes to show you how long that Rich Hill has been around. And Greg Maddox's first game, Davy Lopes played in that game, and Davy Lopes was born in 1945. So when you look at the different stages, whatever it's called, of Rich Hill is pitching in the major leagues right now, and he played in a game that included Davy Lopes, who was born in 1945.
So he'll be 80 next year.
Right. That just shows you exactly how far we go. And Rich Hill still has a great curveball, and I saw him at the Hall of Fame this year. And we knew he was getting ready to go pitch in the big leagues again. And he comes back with the Red Sox. He had a tough day on Sunday, but first 2 appearances, he was really good and had that great curveball that we saw in that first game he ever pitched in 2005 when he struck out Carlos Delgado, who went bailing out on a left-hander's curveball. It was great. All right, the Kurkjians for this week, Jeff.
What do you got?
All right, so Whit Merrifield, former Philly, you watched him play, didn't play very well here. So I found this really interesting. Whit Merrifield is a really good player. He just isn't having a good year. Led the league in hits a couple times, led the league in steals a couple times. So he had a 5-for-5 game recently, just the other day, and he had not had a 3-hit game this year. And then he had a 5-hit game. So he didn't have more than 2 hits in any game, and then he went 5-for-5.
Wow.
So I looked up the last time anybody got this deep into a season with this many at-bats without having a 3-hit game and then gets a 5-hit game. So I'm amazed. Matt Vierling of the Tigers did this in 2022. Eddie Robinson, former general manager of the Rangers when I covered the team, in the early 80s, he did so in 1947. So the kicker after that is after going 5-for-5, Whit Merrifield went 0-for-6. So he went 5-for-5 and then 0-for-6. So he's the 5th guy ever to do that. And the last guy to do it was Tony Gwynn, one of the great hitters of all time.
Wow.
He had a 5-for-5 and followed it up with an 0-for-6. Just the beauty of baseball. One night you're seeing it really, really well, and the next night you go 0-for-6. It's just how the game works. But after his 5-for-5, Whit Merrifield went hitless in 21 straight at-bats. Think about that for a second, Jeff. So Lawrence Butler of the A's has seen it again. Jeff, he's 24 years old. He had another 3-homer game. So now he's got 2 3-homer games this year. So he and Geronimo Baroa are the only players in the history of the A's franchise, and this goes back to the early 1900s with the Philadelphia A's, ever to have 2 3-homer games. So Mark McGwire hit 363 homers with the A's, but didn't have 2 3-homer games for them. Jimmy Fox, one of Pop's favorite hitters of all time, 302 homers for the A's, and didn't have 2 3-homer games as a member.
That's crazy.
And here Lawrence Butler did this. So the other day he also had a 3-homer game, and J.J. Bleday, a teammate, had 5 hits in the same game. So they had a 3-homer game and a 5-hit game in the same day, and they lost the game, which seems hard to do. Well, that's happened 8 times in the history of baseball. Last time, 2013, Troy Tulowitzki and Carlos Gonzalez, they had a 3-homer game and a 5-hit game, and the Rockies lost the game. So that's pretty amazing. All right, you had did you have a
I have a couple of Kurkjians, but from people who listen to Is This a Great Game or What, which is awesome. So you can always submit anything at isthisagreatgameorwhat.com. There's a reach out to us part of the website you can see there. I want to start with Bill Flanagan. Now, I can't 100% confirm this, but it's interesting nonetheless. He writes, former Tigers third base Don Wirt passed away this week. He was an all-star and a World Series champion. He has to be the only player in baseball history whose last name, W-E-R-T, can be typed out by using sequential letters on a keyboard. That's got to be a Kurkjian. Thanks and love the show, Bill.
Well, Bill, we love you for coming up with something like that. And I'm worried about you. You're starting to think like me because this is not healthy. And yes, Don Wirt played on the 68 Tigers that won the World Series in 7 games against the Cardinals. I remember it like it was yesterday. Don Wirt wore number 8. He was not a great offensive player, but he could really play third base. That's really nice to see. And by the way, the WERT, I checked. It does line up on the computer, but my favorite baseball name is Blake Sable, who's been up in the big leagues a couple times this year, and he's the guy the anagram of his name is baseball okay. So you take Blake Sable's name, scramble the words and the letters, you come out with baseball okay. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Also, Jen shared a tweet from John Denton. Speaking of the Cardinals, the last time they just beat the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. The last time they beat the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, Game 5 of the 1964 World Series.
Right. And
here's the fun part of it.
I know the fun part, but let's hear it. No,
so
we'll do
two
this.
Gibsons won that game, Bob Gibson and Kyle Gibson in 2024.
Right.
And 2 Carys were the broadcasters. In 1964, you had Harry Carey, and in 2024, you have Chip Carey.
Right. And Bob Gibson won Game 7 of that series also with another complete game. So he won Game 5 and Game 7 back at the time that we used to do that. All right. A couple other things, Jeff. So the Dodgers got a home run out of from leadoff guy Shohei Ohtani the other day. And this is in the first inning, and then Mookie Betts homered, and then Freddie Freeman homered. So the first 3 batters of the game hit a home run. That's the 8th time in Major League history that the first 3 batters of a game for a team hit a home run. And I've told you J.J. Hardy was part of 2 of those 8, once with the Orioles and once with the Brewers. The difference here is that Ohtani hit the last pitch of his at-bat for a homer. Mookie Betts hit the second pitch of his at-bat for the homer, and Freddie Freeman hit the first pitch. So in a 4-pitch span, there were 3 homers hit. But this is my really stupid thing of the week, Jeff, and I love this. Brewer Hecklin, an outfielder, made his Major League debut for the Brewers. So now for the first time ever, the Brewers have a player on their team named Brewer. So what do you think poor Pop-Pop started to think about after that?
People with names, baseball team names.
Right. So
Ranger.
Right. So Ranger Suarez never played for the Rangers. There's never been anyone named Yankee who played for the Yankees.
That would be next level.
But I will tell you, and there's never been anyone named Marlin who played for the Marlins or Rocky who played for the Rockies. I checked. But in 2023, Jay Jackson pitched for the Jays. So there was
Blue Jays.
Yeah. And this took a little while, 1981-82, and I actually remember him. Angel Moreno pitched for the Angels.
Yeah.
So that's how I spent my day yesterday. How about that?
Have Twins ever played for the Twins?
No.
A little bit different.
No, but we know the story of Rocco Baldelli, the manager of the Twins. His wife this year had Twins.
That's amazing. On this date in Major League Baseball history.
All right, 1974. Now, Jeff, you got to remember in 1974, Pop-Pop was a complete moron, okay? I was so immersed in the San Francisco Giants, it was really unhealthy. I mean, I was a freshman in college, and I just couldn't do enough with the Giants because Willie Mays was my favorite player, and I was completely dazzled by everything, mesmerized by everything him and the Giants did. So in 74, John Montefusco made his hit his first major league homer. He's a pitcher, and he pitched 9 innings in relief in a game to get the victory. 9 innings of relief, which is almost unheard of. And the only story you need to know about John Montefusco is, I can't believe I'm going to tell this, Nena, your grandmother, my beloved mother, she helped me make a John Montefusco jersey, black and orange like the Giants. And she ironed the name Montefusco on the back of this. And I went to a game at the Vet here in Philadelphia, long before Citizens Bank. And I went there and I saw John Montefusco, and I turned my back so he could see my hand-done jersey. And I thought he was going to invite me down and give me a signed baseball. And Jeff, he rolled his eyes at me like, you are the biggest idiot I've ever seen. No. And you know what? He was right. I was in college and I wore that.
That is a little late.
It was really bad. So
Yeah,
that
but
was
I
a
mean-
good reminder. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore.
Well, yeah, probably, but college-age Tim Kurkjian probably looked like a middle schooler, so maybe you could have tricked him.
Yes, he probably thought I was 12 when I was actually 18, but that's hardly the point. All right, Jeff. 1975, Bob Gibson, the aforementioned Bob Gibson, pitched his final major league game, and in it, Bob Gibson's one of the great pitchers ever, one of the most ferocious competitors in the history of baseball. I've told you this story that Dusty Baker asked Hank Aaron once, "What do I do when I face Bob Gibson?" And Hank Aaron goes, "Well, number one, don't ever look at him." And he said, "Whatever you do, don't ever talk to him. And if he knocks you down, don't charge the mound because he will kick your ass." That's who Bob Gibson is. So let's be clear. He's one of the great pitchers ever, and for me, the most ferocious pitcher in the history of baseball. But on this date, 1975, he pitched his final major league game, and in it, he gave up a grand slam to a guy named Pete Lecoq. And Pete Lecoq, his dad was Peter Marshall, who was the host of the Hollywood Squares on TV.
Really?
A million years before you were even born, the Hollywood Squares was a great show. Peter Marshall was the host. I grew up watching him, and then when I found out, like years later, that Peter Marshall had a son, his name was Pete Lecoq. He played in the major leagues, and he hit a grand slam off of Bob Gibson in Bob Gibson's final game.
You know, I'm just going to be here to say, I really think he should have taken his dad's last name, not his dad's first name. Very unfortunate.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. All right, and the last thing was, and this is very personal to me, but 1960, Rene Gonzalez was born. Rene Gonzalez was a middle infielder, really great defender at all infield positions. Played for the Orioles when I covered the Orioles, and I'll never forget him because he had such a great sense of humor. Still keeps in touch with me. I keep in touch with him. So he just got traded to the Orioles, and he comes to the ballpark, and he's got his baseball glove, not his mitt, his glove, in a Wonder Bread bag, and he's got his glove in it. So I said, Gonzo, what is that? And he goes, well, you know the slogan for Wonder Bread. And I said, what? He goes, no holes.
Wow.
So he didn't want any holes in his glove, so he carried his glove around in a Wonder Bread bag. No holes.
Let's go into League in Lids. We've taken every Major League Baseball team, put it in this hat, and every week we pull out a different team name. And you've got the Washington Nationals this week, Dad, for League in Lids.
Right. Now, the Nats are not very good right now, but I am here to tell you, Jeff, they are on their way. James Wood called up earlier this year, a friend of Kenny Wood, my friend Kenny Wood. The kid's going to be a great player. They
Great
just
theme
called
park
up
as well.
Right. Pardon me?
Great theme park, Kennywood.
Yeah. Is
It's
there
a theme park, yeah.
Where is that?
It's in Pennsylvania. But it's near Pittsburgh.
All right.
Great roller coasters.
All right.
You hate them.
Dylan Cruz just got called up, number 2 overall pick behind Paul Skeens, both from LSU. That kid's going to be great. So the Nationals have a chance to look now for the next 5, if not 10 years, hopefully, at James Wood and Dylan Cruz in their outfield every day.
That's crazy.
How exciting is that? Yeah. And, of course, on Sunday, Darren Baker, son of the aforementioned Dusty Baker, made his major league debut.
Wow.
And Darren, of course, swung at the first pitch and hit a ground single up the middle. Dusty was there, got a big high five from all his friends. Like, how great is that? You go to watch your son, and in his first major league game, swings at the first pitch and gets a hit. And you know who Darren Baker is from
famously,
right.
when Dusty Baker was the manager of the Giants. This was
2002.
2002, man.
World
that was
Series.
so long ago.
Right.
But it makes sense because he's now a major leaguer. But he's in the World Series, and JT Snow is rounding third, and Darren Baker is the bat boy, and he must have only been
3 years old.
And he's getting the bat, and JT Snow, while running towards home, grabs Darren Baker by the shirt of his jersey and picks him up and carries him
right. Well,
after touching home plate.
You know, the interesting part there is no first baseman picked a ball out of the dirt better than JT Snow. No one scooped a ball better than JT Snow. And here he scooped up Darren Baker and saved him from what could have been a really bad situation because he was literally on the field.
Yeah.
And he scooped him up and brought him away.
Just right at home plate.
Dusty had a little chat with little tiny Darren about that. Like, son, you got to be careful where you're running. We're on a baseball field.
Absolutely.
And just to finish with the Nationals, Jeff. So for me, the greatest National ever, Max Scherzer and Bryce Harper, they're going to the Hall of Fame someday. And Ryan Zimmerman isn't. But for me, he's the greatest National ever, okay? Mm-hmm. He came up as a rookie out of the University of Virginia, and they just flipped him into the starting lineup and in third in the order and said, you're in charge of this team now. 20 years old. It's incredible how good a player he was for them. He hit 11 walk-off homers, Jeff, in his career. The record is 13. He hit 11. His first one he hit on Father's Day as a rookie in 2006. And then in 2008, I love this, Jeff, he christened Nationals Park. So it opened that night on Sunday Night Baseball.
Right.
And he hit a walk-off homer in the first game ever played at Nationals Park.
I was at that game.
Really?
I was at that game. I was at the first ever game that the Nationals played as the Washington Nationals.
Right.
And I was at the first ever game at Nationals Park.
That is
Crazy.
so cool. And last thing with Ryan Zimmerman, and this is kind of sad, Jeff, but on this date a year ago, or on Labor Day a year ago, we lost Uncle Matt to ALS. And we put together a fundraiser to try to raise some money because we thought he would last a little longer. We needed to pay for, the exorbitant cost of taking care of an ALS patient. So I called Cal Ripken and I said, can you help us with this? Took 5 seconds, I'm in. I called Ryan Zimmerman. It took 5 seconds, and he said, I'm in. So I will never forget Ryan Zimmerman for his willingness to step forward and help our family in a time of need. We never ended up doing it because Uncle Matt passed before we ever got to the fundraiser, but I'll never forget Ryan Zimmerman for that.
It's in the cards. Let's rip them and see what we've got here. We start with Corbin Carroll.
All right, Corbin Carroll, as you know, Jeff, Diamondbacks outfielder, fifth in the MVP voting last year, got off to a horrendous start, was not a good player for 3 to 3.5 months this year. Well, he's figured it out, and he is tearing it up again. And on Saturday, the same day that the Dodgers hit the 3 home runs to start the game, he led off the bottom of the first with an inside the park homer. So here we are, like 7 batters into the game. We have 4 homers, 3 in a row by the Dodgers, and then Corbin Carroll becomes the first Diamondback ever to lead off a game with an inside the park homer.
How about Bronson Arroyo?
Oh, boy.
Throwback for Red Sox
fans. So
fans.
Bronson Arroyo was a really good pitcher, had great command, and he was also a really good musician. Not kind of good, really good. And he played with a lot of really famous people because his music was almost as good as his pitching ability. And he once famously said, I played with Ozzie Smith and I played with Eddie Vedder. My life is complete.
Wow.
How cool is that?
That's incredible. How about Tim Hudson?
All right, Tim Hudson's one of my favorite players, Jeff. You know, we at one point we had only 2 18-inning games in the history of the postseason, and Tim Hudson started both of them, which I always found incredible. How can baseball do this? He was also an outfielder at Auburn. He was a pitcher center fielder at Auburn. So I just casually, and he's a little guy, by the way, I just casually asked him, Tim, what did you do when you played center field the day after you pitched and you had to cut loose and throw a guy out at the plate? And he looked at me, he goes, well, I cut loose and threw the guy out at the plate. Like, it didn't work. It didn't bother me throwing 120 pitches the day before. And I'll never forget this, and this is why I love Tim Hudson. Back in the day where they had to win a game with the Oakland A's, okay, he gave up 2 runs in the first inning to the Mariners. And he came in the dugout, and he was snorting fire. He was so angry because he's so competitive. And he looked at the entire team and said, you get me 3 runs because I'm not giving up any more runs in this game. And the A's scored 3 runs, and he beat the Mariners 3-2.
Wow. Alex Bregman, our final card.
All right, well, we talk about Walter Johnson High School on every episode, Jeff. It's kind of a rite of passage now.
Did you go there?
Yeah, I went to So Alex Bregman's uncle, Benny Bregman, was a sophomore at WJ when I was a senior at WJ, and Alex's dad, Sam Bregman, went to WJ also, and Uncle Bill Shavodian, is good friends with Sammy Bregman.
Wow.
So every time I see Alex Bregman, we somehow come around to baseball and WJ and all that stuff.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Best of all, Tim. So we do this every week. Dad, you create amazing teams that we can then learn more about the way your brain works, really, from these. What do you have this week for Best of All, Tim?
All right. Well, Jeff, as we've mentioned before in the podcast, Saturday was the opening of the college football season. Right. And it's such a cool thing, that first Saturday college football. Even though I don't know much about college football, I love the pageantry and everything else. So I came up with the all Major League Baseball team of players who played college football.
Right.
Okay. So Vic Janowitz is our catcher. He's a Heisman Trophy winner in 1950. Didn't catch much in the major leagues, but he caught in the major leagues. Of course, Todd Helton played quarterback briefly at the University of Tennessee and is a Hall of Fame first baseman. Jackie Robinson was a great running back at UCLA. Drew Henson is the third baseman. I could have picked someone who was probably a little more accomplished in baseball, but, he played quarterback at Michigan, and he played in the major leagues, and I just love that. Ace Parker, I wouldn't say I know who Ace Parker is, sorry, but he's the shortstop. And then our outfield is just beautiful. Deion Sanders, of course. Heisman Trophy winner Bo Jackson, and Kirk Gibson is our third outfielder, who was a great wide receiver at Michigan State. I couldn't put Darren Erstad on this team because there just wasn't enough room, and I also left Brian Jordan off the team, which there just wasn't enough room. But our DH is Frank Thomas, played football at Auburn.
No surprise there.
Jeff Samardzija, pitcher for the Cubs and Giants and others. He was, of course, a wide receiver at Notre Dame. Steve Renko, pitcher for several teams, was a quarterback at Kansas when Gale Sayers was there. Ernie Nevers, Joe Vance, Norm Bass, Garland Buckeye. A bunch of those guys I don't think I know who they are. That's not the point. Every guy I mentioned played in the major leagues and played college football, and I love that crossover.
So we decided, in spirit of college football season, to take that team, Dad. We used our friends at Stratomatic, the market leader in sports simulations. They are amazing. And we love getting your suggestions of great simulations you want our friends at Stratomatic to do, Dad. So we actually took that team, your all college football baseball team.
Right.
And then we put together an all college World Series baseball team. So these were players who played in the College World Series who obviously became major leaguers. And all of those guys in a 7-game series. Right now, I'll run you through the College World Series team real fast. You have...
So all these guys played in the College World Series?
Yes. Posey at catcher, Schwarber's first baseman, DJ LeMahieu's the second baseman, Dansby Swanson is the shortstop, Alex Bregman. Then you've got Ryan Braun, Jackie Bradley Jr., Brandon Belt is the right fielder, and then, the pitchers, Dallas Keuchel, Garrett Cole, Michael Wacha, Sonny Gray, just to name a few on the list, because there's a lot of pitchers who played in the College World Series. So that's your College World Series. We put these two teams against each other. Who do you think would win?
Well, I've got Jackie Robinson and Todd Helton to start with on my team. That's pretty darn good. But I'm going to say the College World Series baseball team wins this competition.
Well, in the first 2 games of the 7-game series that Stratomatic actually simulated for us, they went to college football, the college football team.
Really?
Surprisingly, yeah. Todd Helton actually led all batters 520 average in the 6-game, because they only needed 6 games, because then the All-College World Series team, well, they came back very strong. Alex Bregman, 10 runs in the series he drove in, which is just unbelievable. And, at the end of the day, you've got a whole bunch of great major leaguers on both sides, but they couldn't beat the pitching. Thank you so much to Stratomatic for running that simulation for us. If you have one that you want them to run, we have some really good ideas that have been coming through by our listeners. But all you got to do is go to greatgamerwhat.com or hit us up on X or Facebook or Instagram as well at greatgamerwhat and let us know. A Kurkjian Quandary, Dad, I actually talked to my buddies for our fantasy football draft about this Kurkjian Quandary, and I think I'm really looking forward to hearing what people have to say.
All right, Jeff, we're a little football heavy this week, but it's because people love football. I like football. I enjoy the football season. I enjoy having it on in the background. I just don't understand football anymore ever since they went to the nickel package and the bubble screen, whatever that is called. And by the way, Jeff, what is a skinny post? I grew up where you ran a post pattern. Now it's called a skinny post. Someone needs to explain to me what a skinny post is as opposed to a post pattern.
I think, I would love for somebody to explain that to me, too.
I think it's just
tighter?
It's a tighter
Quicker,
post.
yeah.
Right, a skinny post.
Skinny post.
Sorry. All right. So this is our Kurkjian Quandary of the week, and each week it's more stupid than the next, but that's kind of the point. All right. You get 10 carries. You, Jeff Kurkjian, age 31 with a broken thumb now, having played basketball in the rain on Sunday. Good call on that one, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, you get 10 carries in an NFL game behind any NFL line that you want, okay? How many yards what is going to be your net yardage before, of course, in 10 carries, or, of course, until they carry you off the field because it's no longer possible for you to play. So what is your answer, and what did your boys from the Fantasy Football League, what was their consensus on this?
My answer is minus 12 yards. I think I will only carry the ball 2 or 3 times before I end up getting hurt, or I just quite frankly say I do not have the spirit or the will to continue on. Some of my buddies were saying, if you can find the hole and catch the gap. Now, granted, one of my buddies was a pretty decent high school football player, but he was a tight end, and he was mostly
This is
used
Joey,
for blocking.
right?
It's a big guy, good athlete, great with his
Oh,
hands.
yeah.
So he's not dropping. I mean, I told my buddies, I said, I think some of you aren't even receiving the ball before. I think I'm fumbling the ball.
We determined last night that I don't know anything about football anymore, but you start like 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So to hit the hole, okay, assuming there is a hole, you got to get the ball from the quarterback and get 7 yards.
Full sprint, yeah.
Full sprint, knowing that somebody who weighs 320 could be waiting for you. I am without a doubt. I'm 67 with an artificial hip. There's no doubt I'm in the minus yards, and there is zero chance that I am making it to 10 carries without being carried off the field, either maybe dead, or mostly dead.
Let us know what you think, Great Game or What, or on social media right there as well. Our guest today is Pete Fairbanks.
All right, Pete Fairbanks, again, is a really smart guy. One of the smartest baseball players I've ever met, and that is a compliment. I've always been fascinated by really smart guys who play the game, like Doug Glanville, my dear friend, who was on the podcast earlier, went to Penn, wicked smart, and it's always bothered me that he writes better than I do, and I'm a writer. That just isn't fair. Chris Young, the general manager for the Rangers, went to Princeton, is one of the smartest people I've ever met in the game, and yet you would never know that he was the smartest guy in the game because he doesn't present that image at all. He's so down to earth. And so I once asked him about Ross Ohlendorf, who was his teammate at Princeton. And Chris Young looked at me, and I said, Chris, you're like the smartest guy I've ever met in baseball. And he goes, Ross Ohlendorf is on a different level than me and everybody else. Ross Ohlendorf, I asked him once about the SATs or whatever it was, and he got one wrong in the math section, and it just it nearly killed him, much like it killed Pete Fairbanks, as we'll learn from his interview. And then Ross, who's the most humble guy in the world, looks at me and he goes, and then I took another test, kind of like the SATs, and he goes, I'm pretty sure I got them all right, which I'm not. So he played.
Wow.
He played. He played poker at Princeton for the first time in his life. He'd never played poker before, and he's playing with the guys on the Princeton baseball team. He's never played poker before in his life. And after about 10 minutes, he's the best poker player. And they all said, like, how did you know when to play that card? And he goes, well, I noticed that, 4 face cards were already out. So it really worked in my favor that
Percentage chance.
Yes. So he's counting cards 10 minutes into the first card game that he'd ever played. I love that. Brad Osmus, who's the bench coach for Aaron Boone. What is Boone?
Sumswa for 3. That's Brad Osmus's last name backwards. And we learned in the Aaron Boone interview, my favorite moment of the entire show was when he says he sees Brad Osmus, his bench coach, mind you, and says, Sumswa for 3.
Right, which is the Marv Albert 3-point shot thing, only it's his name backwards. So Brad Osmus went to Dartmouth, really smart guy, and again, you would never know it by the way he presents himself. That's what he's not pretentious, neither is Chris Young, neither is Ross Ollendorf. That's what I love about these guys. And Brad once used the word malevolent in a complete sentence when he was a catcher for the Padres, and I went, this is unbelievable that he could do this. And he told me, I said, Brad, does anyone on the team ever come up to you and just want to know what you know? And he goes, well, yeah. And he goes, guys on the bus will say, we'll be watching Jeopardy, in the clubhouse or whatever. And they would say, you know all the answers to these, right? Because it's Jeopardy. You have to know all the answers to all the questions. And Brad Austin goes, I don't know any of the answers. Right. Just because you go to Dartmouth doesn't mean you get every Jeopardy answer right. But Pete Fairbanks, who's coming up, what's his favorite TV show, Jeff?
Jeopardy.
Right, and he's going to talk about that. He got it from his dad. And again, I don't want to be corny about this, Jeff. It is so refreshing to meet a baseball player who loves words.
Yeah.
He does the New York Times crossword puzzle, as we told you, every day. He reads 1 book a day if he can. He's wicked smart. And we talked to him for 25 minutes, and I'm not sure there's a baseball question in there, but you will be fascinated by this discussion.
Yeah, well, you're fascinated by sacrifice flies, and as you said earlier, you're fascinated by smart guys. So here we are, Pete Fairbanks on the podcast.
Welcome back to Is This a Great Game or What? And we're joined by Pete Fairbanks of the Tampa Bay Rays, one of the best closers in the game. He throws 100 miles an hour, and way more impressive, he is the most well-read player in the game, has the best vocabulary in the game. Pete, this is my son, Jeff.
How we doing? You are pumping my tires a little bit too much to start this. So now I'm going to have to try and make sure that I drop, the widest range of words that I can as we go throughout this.
You need to go into your SAT vocabulary and be able to do this. Now, my dad, one of his favorite stories he's ever written was about how you in the bullpen, you do the New York Times crossword. And this is every day, Pete?
Yeah, so we've lost a couple guys. Poche's been he's still been doing it a good bit. I haven't done it as much recently just because we lost our last guy in Jason Adam that really did it with us. But yeah, so we actually, Poe and I just had my big Turner Syndrome auction. It was silent auction day at the ballpark. And we actually auctioned off a chance to do a crossword puzzle with us, as your dad has done. So yeah, we're going to be doing, I think it's going to be a Wednesday Times. We had an auction winner do it. I think he and his grandson are coming up. I'm building a Lego set with his grandson, and then we're doing the crossword after that.
Pete, look, Jeff and I could never do the New York Times crossword puzzle correctly. How do you explain how you and Poche and the rest are so good at this?
Practice, probably. I would have to say, so 1, practice. 2, my dad did it I don't know if he still has a subscription or not, but my dad did it a ton. So I'd always try and throw one in if I thought I could get one, which in my younger years was not as frequent as it is now. Right. And then I've watched a lot of Jeopardy. And it turns out Jeopardy and crossword puzzles, I feel like there's a pretty good overlap of both interest and ability to find answers to obscure things.
Right. Pete, like in Jeopardy, if they have the baseball questions, I'm in. But is there a non-sports category where you say, I got this one, even before you see the answers?
There's a few that I'll go like 5 for 5 on immediately. would have put me in a good spot to try and double up with a daily double. I was scrolling through my socials the other day, and one popped up of Who Said It from the Harry Potter books, and I think it was the first round of it, so it was 200 to 1,000, and I was 5 for 5 immediately. But yeah, it's I watched that with my dad a lot. Actually, probably more recent post high school, just because I would be back at the house, in early minor leagues when it's on at 4:30, whatever it is. So yeah, done a lot of attempted to play along with Jeopardy, and I've gotten stumped quite a few times, and I've done well quite a few times.
Right. Well, Pete, I'll tell you, every night before my wife and I go to bed, my wife Emily, we do the mini crossword on the New York Times app, and it's obviously a miniature version, and it's really hard. We have trouble, and we do it, and we time each other, and we try to see who can finish first. So for you to finish it pretty much every day, it's really impressive.
Yeah, so I don't do the mini a ton. One of my wife's cousins, Bella, I was in Boston, and she was like, "Have you ever done the mini?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I prefer the real thing, right?" So I raced her and just blew her out of the water. So Bella, it was a great effort, but that day was not for you. But they have. Do you guys play the other games on there? I think that in terms of literacy fun, I think that the New York Times, with between strands, connections, etc., does a great job of giving you a little bit of a little bit of mental stimulation.
Yeah, we do connections every night. It's connections and the mini. My dad does Wordle every single morning, but doesn't share it with anybody, Pete.
Good.
I do Wordle every day. He doesn't share his score.
Hey, sometimes he's just competing. You're just competing against yourself, right? You don't need to show off your prowess. It's just competing with yourself.
Right. I totally agree. Pete, have you ever seen a word in a New York Times crossword puzzle that you take and then use it with the media that night? You told me a great Mark Tompkins story.
No, I should though. I think that would be a great one. My favorite was a bit of Midwest jargon when I dropped cattywampus on Trisha Whitaker, who is our sideline reporter. And that is just a shout out to my mother. My mother used that quite a few times when I was growing up, so that one stuck with me.
Right. When you finish a crossword puzzle correctly, as you did with me in 45 minutes, you and Colin Poche, is there a celebration? Are hands raised in the air? Do you keep the puzzles? How does that work?
No, most of the time, so our standard crossword procedure is we finish, sign it real quick, throw it right in the recycle, and then start again the next day.
But you have to sign it, right?
Recycling it, right? Yeah, you got to sign the bottom. That's part of the part of the gig. You got to get it done.
When my dad did this story and covering the two of you doing the crossword, did you make sure he was there earlier in the week to do the interview?
I think it was a Tuesday. Yeah, it was earlier in the week. It was not. We made the executive decision that we were not going to mess around with like a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Just Saturday for the trickiness of some clues, and Sunday because nobody wants to sit down and try and do 122 clues or whatever it is that day.
No.
Right. Pete, you told me the highlight of your life would be what? Fill in the blank.
Have I answered this before?
Yes. It's about the New York Times crossword puzzle.
I would like to be a clue. I would like to be an answer in it.
That's what you told me. It would be the highlight of your entire life.
That would be, obviously, other than winning a World Series or, some other accolade, I think that, being the answer to a clue in the New York Times would be just about as good as it gets.
I was going to say that or a Jeopardy answer.
A Jeopardy answer also would be good. That would be
That like
another.
people, the excitement I've seen on social media, celebrities will post like, I was an answer, like
Yeah,
that's
it's
they
free.
won an Oscar, but they got an answer on Jeopardy, and that's bigger.
Way, way bigger. There's why not? It's such like it's one little snippet, but it's so fun to permeate into a different realm
Right.
and kind of cross over.
So you mentioned the Harry Potter books. Friday, September 6th is National Read a Book Day. And also my wife's birthday, by the way. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. My wife, Emily.
Happy early birthday to Emily.
Thank you so much. I'll let her know. And so for you, reading was the very beginning of all of this love of wordiness. Is that right?
Yeah, far and away. And yeah, it just goes back as far as I can remember. And I think I told Tim that my mother was reading me. We went through the first Harry Potter book, right? We read Sorcerer's Stone together. It was like my nighttime. She would read it aloud. It took however long. We started the second one. We got to like the second chapter, and I'm like, Mom, you're not reading fast enough for me anymore. So I'm going to take this by myself.
How old were you?
Probably like first or second grade, I think, maybe second grade, somewhere along those lines.
You were reading Harry Potter at that young of an age. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I think, had I been older, I might have picked up on some more of the nuance and, understand that all the spells are really just Latin words that have been repurposed. But yeah, so I started that, and I remember, I know I've told this story before, but so there used to be a Borders, right? Before Borders closed, there was the Brentwood Promenade. It's in St. Louis. You go down Brentwood Boulevard. It's right there on your left. I think it's a Nordstrom Rack now, if I'm correct, which way better purposed as a Borders, if you ask me.
Right. Blasphemous, right?
So we went in there. We snagged the fifth Harry Potter book, Order of the Phoenix, and my mom had to run errands. So we go to a store. I think we went to the first stop was like Bed Bath & Beyond, and I found a chair. Like this first thing I did, found a chair, just sat down, read for the 45 minutes that she was going throughout the store getting what she needed. Got back in the car, started reading again. Went to the Target that's right over there, found a spot to sit, started reading. So yeah, it was. I read a lot as a kid. I've always continued to read, but I kind of carve out some time now where I'm doing. We got a machine called a newbie, and I'm microcurrenting, which is basically using a very low level stim on my arm just every day as part of a nerve health. So I sit down, strap the microcurrent on, get whatever book I'm rolling through, and then pick it up, read for my 30, and then continue that each day.
And Pete, as a kid, the Hardy Boys, they were your guys,
yes.
right?
I have another good Hardy Boy story. I think I told you this one. So we're driving through like the Black Hills, everything out west, up the Dakotas. We're going to Devil's Tower. We're doing all this. And it's super scenic, but I'm like 9 and I could care less about what's out the window. I'm trying to read about, I'm reading about them squishing themselves into the back of a biplane as they're trying to solve, this, because I guess like the checks in this instance, checks were sent out through mail, and people were trying to steal said check order, and they're stuck in the back of a biplane. And I'm like, Mom, Dad, I don't care about these hills, right? I'm trying to read about this mystery. But yeah, my dad had, I don't know, I don't think he still has them, but he had like the old school is like the tan hardbacks where it just had like the name on the front and the spine. So I had like 8 of them with me and was just reading constantly instead of looking at all the lovely scenery of, the Dakotas.
Right. But the reading mostly comes from your mother, correct?
Yes. My dad likes to read a lot too. So I'd say it's a team effort, but my mom was a 4th grade teacher and then a librarian. So I think in terms of where the credit should be allocated, she's definitely gets the lion's share of the reading love.
Pete, I think you're in the minority for people of our generation who would probably prefer a good book than streaming a TV show. Have you ever had a teammate come to you and say, Pete, all right, I'm switching over. I need a great book. Who was it and what book did you suggest to them if that happened?
I don't know if I've had that many. I've had discussions about, because I like fiction significantly more than nonfiction. So I'll try and convince people that they should read fiction. Doesn't work that well. We've got a few. Jalen Beeks, big fiction, fantasy, science fiction reader. Tyler Alexander, also a big fiction reader, and that's like the minority. Boz actually joined my book club the other day. Might have been yesterday. I'm in the back doing my microcurrent, and he plops down with it was nonfiction, unfortunately, but plopped down in one of the massage chairs and was reading back there. So it was nice to have a fellow member for a little bit.
All right, now don't be humble about this. Tell the truth. What did you do on your ACTs, the verbal? What score did you make? Tell the truth.
I think I had a 34 on the. I mean, the ACT is all reading comprehension, right? Except for the math. So I was good at reading comprehension. I think I got a 34 on that. I know that I only missed one question on the math section, and as you can tell, it still haunts me.
Now, Pete, you had a chance to go to an Ivy League school.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what one of your high school teachers told you. Because if you don't tell it, I will.
Oh, man. So, and God love her, Anne Marie Brewster was my English teacher for 2 years at Webster Groves High School. And so to preface this, my dad played baseball at Mizzou. My mom's two brothers played football. My mom's dad played football. My mom's dad's brother played football. The line of people that played sports at Mizzou or went to Mizzou in my family is strong. So I was never going anywhere else. Dartmouth was pretty heavily recruiting me. And when I told her that I was not going to go to Dartmouth, she was like, I don't know if I'll ever forgive you for this. She held a grudge against me for at least a little while. She was not happy with me. But look, and what's funny is I have family so my mom's other cousin and I think his wife and both of their kids all went to Dartmouth. So
right,
just wasn't. Who wants to play baseball in Connecticut?
Right.
Or I don't know if that's exactly where Dartmouth is, but that doesn't sound like a great time.
Right. So Brad Ausmus, Yankees bench coach, went to Dartmouth, and he told me that he'd go on a plane with the guys, and Jeopardy would be on, and everyone on the team expected him to know every answer because he went to Dartmouth. Does that happen to you? I know those guys on the team know how smart you are and how well-read you are. Do they come to you with like random questions thinking he has to know this?
No, not really. We do actually. I think Sulcer's back with us now. Cole Sulcer went to Dartmouth. So we at one point, in our Durham bullpen, this was in 2019, we would take out where there's a book called What If, and it's basically a giant book of hypotheticals and then like deep dive scientific explanations for these hypotheticals. So we would then take one and then discuss it and see where we, were right or wrong compared to the actual scientific explanations of them. We had one was if you drained all of the oceans on Earth, like a bathtub, how long would it take basically to drain and fill up Mars, which was a pretty interesting hypothetical. I think we were way off on both the volume of the ocean and how fast it could drain.
Oh, that's way more science-based than the Kurkjian Quandaries we do here on our podcast.
Oh, well, good. I like it good. I like all sorts of puzzles, Okay.
Give me a movie that you love that maybe not everybody else loves, but you love that movie.
I couldn't tell you the last time I'll say I will go strictly for the fact that everybody else that I've talked to about it was confused by it was Tenet, which was Chris Nolan's two parallel timeline, but not timelines, but he had two sets of parallel events running in opposite directions as the movie went. Which I loved and thought it was fairly easy to pick up on, but from the people that I discussed it with, it was not as easy to pick up on, apparently. They're a little more confused than I was.
My first job out of college was in Cleveland, Ohio, and I lived with a guy that I went to college with. And we had what was called Christopher Nolan Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, first Tuesday of every month, we'd watch a different Christopher Nolan movie, and we'd spend the next month talking about it. So Tenet is a great example. If you don't know what you're getting into with a Nolan movie, you're going to be tricked.
Yes.
You got to make sure you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, you have like that, to an extent, Interstellar. You got to go in with at least a basic understanding of a concept that you might not have
Absolutely.
a big understanding of to begin with. So,
Right. Pete, you have 2 children. Isaac is 4. Lottie
yes.
is 2. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct? And
That's it.
are
We had
you?
meet the teacher this morning.
Oh, and how did that go?
Once Isaac found the Lego bin in his pre-K class, he did not want to leave this morning. So I don't know how it's gonna be great to get him there, and then I'm sure that there will be some fights to put up the Legos and do the math, science, and reading
Right.
study that he needs to do.
Right. Now, are you reading to him, both children, every night, or every night you're home, you're at the ballpark a lot of nights? How does that work?
Yeah. Last night I did. I try and read whenever I can to either of them, just because we're gone for half the time. We play at night, etc. It's a little harder to get that done. So off season, definitely. Last night I did. What did we read? We read an eyewitness history book about ancient Rome because my son loves it. He told my wife that he wants to be a Roman fencer when he grows up, and I said, "Buddy, that's just a gladiator, and I don't think you necessarily want to be a real gladiator. But you can try and do what Dad does, and it'll be about as close as you can get besides the combat sports."
Right.
So I did that, and then read my daughter which one did we read last night? She didn't want to read Moana. I read her she calls them tiny books. So we got an advent calendar of like Disney stories, and they come with books that are like iPhone sized, but they are like full pages of words because they're trying to tell the whole story in these tiny little books. So it leads to a lot of paraphrasing. But I told a very paraphrased version of Peter Pan last night to my daughter after she got mad that I turned her light off to go to bed and yelled at me for about 15 minutes.
Are you any good at Legos? You must be great at them,
Yes.
right?
I like to build. I'm in the process of one build right now. It's I guess it's like a 3D picture frame of the Batman animated series from the 90s. And so I'm about maybe an eighth of the way done because NCAA college football came out, and I've been playing far more Xbox than I have been building Legos. But that's been a pretty fun one. I picked one up yesterday as an impulse buy when I was walking past the aisle. Since both of my kids are really into Peter Pan, there's like a little tiny diorama of Peter Pan, Wendy, and Tinkerbell flying over London. So I'm going to build that with my son at some point coming up. Yeah, so I do a decent bit of building.
I was a Lego kid growing up, Pete, and I just bought my nephew. He's staying with us for a bit. He's 7. A Lego of Rocket from Marvel.
Yes,
right.
Great,
And
great.
it was like 10 and up, right? I'm thinking I'm really gonna have to help this kid out. So detailed and so incredible to see what the Lego sets have become, because when we were growing up, Pete, it wasn't nearly as cool as what we're doing. No. I got this buddy of mine, his son just did the Titanic, and it's legitimately
huge.
Massive.
I've seen it. It's massive.
And it's detailed, and you can open it up, and you can see inside the staterooms and stuff. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. The 3D
Where
printer.
were those when we were growing up?
Well, they could not 3D print anything when we were growing up, unfortunately.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But yeah, the detail and the kind of like new pieces that they were able to come up with the 3D printer has really pushed Lego building into another level, I would say.
Pete, you do Legos, you do crosswords, you read a book a day if you want to. Is there anything else that you do that, just be clear here, not every major league player likes to do this? Do you have another hobby, another interest that guys on your team go, like, what's wrong with you?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, they might think that. I like to collect cards, but not really. I don't really do sports cards, so I have a good chunk of modern Pokemon cards. Some of the more vintage ones, but nothing that's too crazy. My buddies and I actually run a bit of a side card store in our free time. So I'll collect those. I really like, I'd say probably my favorite recently of stuff that's come out. Somebody did a bunch of Marvel stuff in kind of an anime, which anime is like Japanese comics. So they did a Marvel anime, and they came out with the second series through Upper Deck. And these cards are awesome. Just the art on them, the different, interpretations that you get are fantastic. So I'm excited to delve a little bit more into those. Pokemon cards. I'm deep into an Air Force rebuild with NCAA college football, which is a little more prevalent in the sports world, I would say.
Yeah, everybody is playing NCAA. Dad, they finally came out with a brand new NCAA football game after years and years of depriving us.
Mm-hmm.
Pete, how old are you?
I am 30. I turned 30 this past December.
Okay, so I just turned 31. So, I mean, for us, this was like one of the greatest games ever made, and then they just stopped making it. Now, everybody, like Pete and I, who have young children, are now saying to our wives, I need to go buy this and relive my childhood.
Yes. I told my wife, so I don't typically play a bunch. Right now, whenever I'm at home, my son, in the interim, I have a Switch, and so I would play, Smash Bros, Mario Kart, all the Pokemon games, etc. My son has completely, over the last 2 years, completely hijacked my Switch. So I have had no content that way. So I finally said, you know what, I've had enough of this. We're going to get the dock out. We're going to set up Smash Bros on the TV so we can play. And so more recently, if I've been playing, it's been with him with a little bit of Smash Bros. I was trying to play last night, but there's a new season of the Umbrella Academy, which is, I think, and there's only been 2 instances where I have read something and thought that the adaptation was better. And I think the Umbrella Academy is one of those instances.
Do you know what the Umbrella Academy is?
Yeah, I just had David Castaneda, who plays Diego, on my radio station here in Philadelphia. I'm a country music morning show host. Yeah, I've seen the show. It is, talk about shows that you really got to put the phone down and focus on.
Yeah, you got to lock in. It is.
Look, I'm 67 years old. I haven't understood one word for the last 10 minutes of this conversation. I think it's great. Now, Pete, when you're in 10 years, when your baseball career is over and you got 300, maybe 400 saves, what are you going to do with your life? Because you are so well-rounded and so well-read. What's the next step for Pete Fairbanks?
Hopefully sitting in front of a microphone and being on the other end of this discussion, I think would be fun. Maybe coaching, hopefully at Mizzou for a little bit. I think that there's a lot of avenues, hopefully, to explore in the not as near future.
Right. All right. Last thing for me, Pete, and we'll go back to the New York Times crossword since that's where we started. What is the definition of? I don't want to use the word cheating, but when I did it with you and Colin, you didn't look up a thing. Mm-hmm. No dictionaries, no cell phones, no Google, no nothing. I mean, at what point do you have to say, all right, we got to bring in a cell phone to look something up? How often does that happen? And is that cheating?
I think. So if you're like just strict, if you just like are like, I don't know this, I'm going to Google it. Yes. If you end up in a bit of a snafu and you want to make sure something is correct, that might blur the lines, but not as bad as strictly Google, like just straight up Googling something. I would say any bringing in of an outside source is technically cheating. And if that makes me have to cheat at times, I will happily do so, because I would rather make sure that I was correct on something than miss out on my preparation time for a game because I'm stumped on a crossword.
Right. Pete really had a rough outing today. I think he was struggling on the New York Times Wednesday puzzle.
But you also told me it really relaxes you, and it potentially makes you a better baseball player because you can go into a little zone that's different than throwing 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, anything to take the mind off of, right? Because for better or worse, the bullpens don't get the love. But the bullpens, the only time that you typically hear from us, other than people that are marginally interesting at times, like I have the capability within me to be, is if we blow a game, right? So we blow a game, cameras in your face, hey, how was it? And you're like, well, wasn't great. So yeah, anything to alleviate some of that stress, do some other stuff that takes your mind off of it, where you're not just strictly preparing or thinking about baseball, etc. I think is a great avenue for us.
Well, Pete, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Pete, this has been a delight. I knew it would be, and I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you meeting my son, Jeff. So good.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Pete Fairbanks, thank you for being our guest this week on Is This a Great Game or What? He can read a book at 100 miles per hour and he can throw 100 miles per hour. It's not really fair for us guys,
right?
For him to do both.
I know. So I asked him once, has he ever found a word or done a word in New York Times crossword and then gone out and spoken to the media and used one of those words in a complete sentence? So he said, Mark Tompkins, the beat guy there, Mark's one of my favorite guys, will be a Hall of Fame baseball writer someday. And he said that Pete told me that just for Topkin, he came out and dropped a zeitgeist on him, like in the middle, in a complete sentence. And then Pete looks at me and he goes, and the guys in the room, like Taylor Walls, think, what are you, speaking German? Which, of course, he is speaking German. This is why Pete Fairbanks is so refreshing and so good to talk to. Is he loves words as much as he loves pitching, and he really loves to pitch.
Pete Fairbanks, thank you so much. Next week, a special Roberto Clemente show when it comes to one of the most legendary outfielders who made such an impact on the game of baseball, with Roberto Clemente Day coming up. We're going to dive into that with all of our great things as well. If there's a simulation you want from Stratomatic, let us know at Great Game or What. You can follow us on all the socials, and don't forget to share this show with a friend. All right, Dad, wrapping up this week. Thank you for listening, and as always, thank you for being a part of our family.